All right, good afternoon. This is an informational webinar intended for new grant managers and other key representatives that support the initiation, management, and closeout of individual research grants. The agenda for today is to really provide a brief overview of the program, but to really spend the majority of time discussing what it takes to start up a grant and reporting requirements. You are encouraged to send questions to the webinar chat mailbox throughout the webinar, and we will answer all questions. All feedback is also appreciated. We strive to constantly make our processes more efficient, so your feedback is always appreciated. This webinar is specific to Bankhead Coley, King, and Live Like Bella research grant programs. The award letters were sent out on the 31st, and they go to the sponsored research office. You were copied as the principal investigators, and then your award letters, were uploaded into the PeerNet system. All right, just to give you a bit of background, and I see that I've got a title here that's incorrect. So for the Live Like Bella, $3 million is given out annually, $10 million for Bankhead Coley, and $8 million for King. We are only able to fund a total of up to 7% of the Bankhead Coley and King research grants each year. And so we have certainly heard back from researchers that that it's more difficult to get a Florida grant than it is an NIH grant. But what we've also heard is that it really does help for researchers to receive tenure and and of course further their research. First with Florida funds, but then receiving the follow-on funding from the federal research grant programs. And just as a very brief review, so annually we determine how much money is available. The advisory council, in this instance, it'd be the Biomedical Research Advisory Council, provides updates to the funding opportunity announcement. This past year, we added a sentence that you could apply for research grants that on emerging issues that are impacting cancer and tobacco-related diseases. Okay. The State Surgeon General is the ultimate approver of the funding opportunity announcement. We go through a letter of intent period. We go through a grant application period. This you know. We have 2 levels of peer review. 3 individual peer reviews are first conducted. And then the top tier of the research grants based on the NIH scoring of 1 to 9 go to panel peer review. All the comments from the 3 individual peer reviews, as well as the panels, is provided afterwards to the applicants. The advisory council meets and reviews the scores and makes funding recommendations. Those funding recommendations are presented to the State Surgeon General or their designee, and then the awards are finalized. And that your letter of on the 31st was the indication that those awards had been finalized. So congratulations to all of you. I'm going to spend most of this time post-award. Okay, PeerNet. PeerNet is what you have been using to submit your letter of intent and your grant application. Now it is, the functionality has been expanded, and it can be used, and it's going to be used as the online grant management system. What that means is the same sign in and password that you use to submit your research grants will have additional folders in it with the key documents that you need for executing your research grant, as well as reporting. You'll use it, I call it like your own personal file cabinet drawer. And but as documents are uploaded, reports are uploaded, there's automatic emails, a notification that will go to your grant managers, and we'll come back to you that way as well, so that there is a notification system all within PeerNet. Now, you have access, excuse me, as a principal investigator to your sign-in and password. However, we know that you have staff that work on budgets, submit the quarterly reports, other research staff that have a hand in the total of identifying the progress made quarterly. You will need to add those individuals to your account as contributors. By doing so, you will add them, and then they can help upload, let's say, your budget, if there's someone specifically that works on your budget. And so it's your file cabinet drawer, and you are the one that let people in. Okay, let me see here. At this link, you will find instructions. Oops, is that working? Is that what I need to do? Hold on. Oh, thank you. Don't go too far. Okay. You will have lots of, there's information here that's provided to you. This can be found also in the at floridahealth.gov, searching under biomedical research grants or the grant forms library. There you will also find a recorded video that where the vendor, which is Oak Ridge Associated Universities, there is a webinar that will talk you through the process, if that is something that will be helpful to you. Okay. For consideration in the post-award process, let's talk about that for a little bit. We're going to talk about the final budget. You'll need to submit a new conflict of interest form. And then we'll talk about execution of terms and conditions, something I hate to not talk about, but I do anyways, and that's financial consequences. So we're going to talk about it so that we don't have to deal with it. And then other deliverables and change requests. All right. So when you submitted a conflict of interest form with your grant application, that was several months ago, we need for you to sign a new conflict of interest form to make sure that nothing has changed. And as you know, if there is a conflict of interest, your institution will work with you on a management plan. Once again, you will need to be able to complete your budget and budget narrative, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. It seems to be an area that causes some issues. And we work on the July 1 through June 30 fiscal year, and note the salary and fringe benefits, that a maximum of 3% annual increase can occur each year. Also important for the pre-execution is to start working on your institutional approvals. IRB, IACUC, and all the others the documentation of approvals will be required shortly after your grant is executed. So please begin working on them now. And of importance, the awarded project title must match the project title on the approval. Sometimes as in IRB, we'll use that as an example. The title of what is submitted to the IRB has a different title than what was on your application. That means that we don't know that it's really relevant to your research grant award. So having the consistent titles is important. All right. We're going to ask that budget revisions are due by February the 11th. That's a week from today. We have contract managers that will be reaching out to you if you need a one-on-one webinar with them. They will walk you through the process so that we can get this done quickly. There were actually very few, there were not significant changes in the awards. As an example, 8 of 9 Live Like Bella research grants had no reduction in funding at all. And so if you have a Bella grant and it's all good, then you're not going to have to rework your budget numbers. And then all other grants in the Bankhead, Coley, and King, they received a reduction of about maybe 5%. It really was not very much at all. Knowing that the budgets will get started, that we'll receive them by February the 11th, the goal is to have the grants executed by March 31st so that you can begin your work as of April 1st. We're going to go to the grant management forms library in just a minute. What is important is to know is that plan your budgets by months and not years, which is typically how the grant application budgets are put together. So knowing that grants will start April 1, your first year should really only be for 3 months. For April, May, and June through June 30. And so if you use the example that's up here of 36 months, you'll see that the years, it may be a 3-year grant or 36 months, but it really goes over for a 4-year period. So you've got 3 months 3 months for the first year. Second year, you would have 12 months. Third year, you should have 12 months. And then the fourth year should be 9 months. Okay, all right, okay. Now, okay. I'm not gonna do, okay. And I'm bringing up the grant forms library. Okay. The grant forms library can be found at floridahealth.gov, but it's also a resource that is available in PeerNet as well. So going to the grant management forms library, as I mentioned before, there was instructions for awardees. We talked about that on the PeerNet system. And then here's the webinar if you want to look at the webinar. Okay. All right, here you will find the reportable financial interest form, otherwise known as the conflict of interest. And then you've got the different budget forms. Let's go to a 12-month form just to show you. Okay, so as you'll see here, it's for 12 months, but it goes over 2 fiscal years. So it'll be the first 3 months for fiscal year 21, 22, and then 9 months for fiscal year 22, 23. These have been, there's embedded formulas in there to help make sure that everything works out appropriately, and less effort that will be needed by those that will fill out these forms. So whereas we pulled up a 12-month budget form for every grant and the time period, you'll see that there is a separate budget attachment form. We did this to make it easier for the research staff to complete. I do want to bring your attention to the 54-month budget, and we don't need to open it, but for clinical trials and other research where in years past we've funded the research for 60 months, there's been some issues there, and the issues evolve around once the funding goes past 60 months, the funding goes away. And so, and that is through Florida statute. And so that doesn't give us any time, or doesn't give you time to take the 60 days, excuse me, 60 days that you need for your final cumulative report and final budgets and expenditures. So that is an important change for you all to understand. Okay. All right, and we've got a question. Are we to revise the budget to reflect the new salary cap of $203,700, or stick with the former cap? I would use the new salary cap. Okay.
Connie, this is the grant coordinator here at to inject on sure that the use is related to the year of the FOA, because of us going forward. We have to use the one that is for, I believe it's 2021, because that's when the FOA was released. It's tied to the year of the release, not necessarily when it's executed grant.
Okay.
We're so 21. We're in 22 now, the calendar year on the federal cycle. So it would have to be that figure. We can get that out to everybody if we need to do a clarification.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, good question. Okay, Dr. Thompson, you have your hand up. Oh, he can't, but you have to. Dr. Thompson, you can unmute. Your hand is up. You can also put your question in the chat.
Sorry, it looks like I was muted. Could you summarize that last conversation? The audio quality there was poor, and I'm not sure what was said or whether it was relevant or was an aside comment.
Okay. So the question was about the salary cap. And so the funding opportunity announcement was released for fiscal year 21-22. And so the salary cap would be consistent with what is in federal regulation during that time period of fiscal year 21-22. However, what we said is that, because that's something that I think we're going to just need to do a little investigating on, we will send that out to all of the awardees so that there's no confusion there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. So once we receive your budget and budget narrative, the terms and conditions will be drafted for the appropriate signatures. And the attachment 1 and attachment 2 is really is going to outline what deliverables are due for what quarter. So please keep close watch on that attachment, and it's going to really be of service to you. The terms and conditions will be routed and sent to signature via DocuSign. It will be the point of contact. Typically, it's the sponsored research office designee that signs the terms and conditions. And then the final signature is needed by a Department of Health designee. And once the Department of Health signs the grant, or the terms and conditions, excuse me, it is then in effect. So expenditures related to your research grant cannot begin before the execution date. Okay, important for you guys to know. All right. Also in the terms and conditions, you need to take a look at when invoices are due. When are your quarterly reports due? If you submit late, we are required to initiate a 10% penalty per invoice. So I know you'd like to avoid that, and we would too. So look at your attachment 1 and attachment 2, and it clearly outlines when your reports are due. And you will be submitting those reports through PeerNet. Okay. All right. These are some of the violations that result in an interest penalty or a penalty against your total award for that particular quarter. Failure to get the IRB or the institutional approvals, late submission, lack of scientific progress. We have a scientific research advisor that reviews all of the research. And actually, we now have a team of 4 that actually look at the research, and we compare it from previous quarters. So we need to see that there is progress that is occurring. We recognize that progress can be slow, but it's important for you just to show what you have now done this quarter versus what you had done last quarter. And if there's scientific misconduct that needs to be reported immediately, that can also include a penalty. Be careful not to change your aims and protocol without approval. Key personnel change. There should be no change in effort in the PI for the first year. And of course, if you receive federal funding for the same grant application that you submitted to the state of Florida, you need to let us know. And if there can be a reduction in the overlap, that would be fine. But you can't have 2 different funding sources for the same research.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Tanisha Singleton, will we be able to update the signing official?
Yes, you'll be able to update the signing official. So work with your, it could be the post-execution office, sponsored research office to make sure that you've got that we have the right name. We maintain that information, but I know that there have been changes. I know well, I could think of 3 institutions off the top of my head where there have been changes. So if the signatory has, if you want to provide us the signatory name, that would be ideal. And we also need the email address. Okay. All right, all payments are fixed price. So you're going to get equal quarterly payments. You will be turning in quarterly expenditure reports so that we can see what you're spending your money on. But we don't expect you that if you're getting, let's say, $100,000 a quarter, to show that you're spending $100,000 in that quarter. The final payment, we anticipate that as your research goes on, that there will be more expenditures. So the equal payments helps to get things off smoothly for you. The final payment is reconciled with the actual amount over the life of the grant to prevent overpayment. So if you have a $500,000 grant and in the last invoice, you've only spent $480,000. Your final invoice would be reduced by $20,000. So we end up giving you what you have expended. Okay. All right. Some of the deliverables that will be required: quarterly deliverables, a progress report. We talked about that. Annual Florida legislative report, which is required in Florida statute. This is an opportunity for you to provide an update on research projects. And it is interesting that we will get questions back regarding some of the research. And so they really do read these reports. So it's an opportunity for you. Okay. No cost extension requests, final deliverables. The grant continuation report is something that we don't really work with anymore. Okay, budget categories are monitored at the current approved amounts. What does that mean? So in your budget, you put in salaries, supplies, expenses. But if you turn in a quarterly expenditure report, and let's say you have $100,000 in supplies total, and you submit a quarterly expenditure report that shows now your total expense for supplies is $150,000. You will need to have, you'll have to submit a change request in your budget. You can never spend more in any one category than what you have allocated. However, we know things change, right? And so that's why the budget change form is necessary. And it's just an accounting. We have never not approved a budget change request. It's just once again, you can only spend what you have in each category. All right. Okay. We've talked about the progress report. Okay. There's some documentation needed. If you have research participants, you will need to submit the IRB approval and the consent forms. We will keep that on hand, and you will need to submit a payment log with no personal identification. So you've had 20 participants this quarter. They've gotten $50 each. So we just need a line item showing the number, that 20 number of participants, and how much money they received. Okay. A couple of years ago, we had a cap that could be no more than $36 a day for participant payments. That no longer applies. We've worked hard to change that. The lodging rate is currently $150 a day. There, you'll need to go into the grant manager, I'm sorry, the grant manual. And in there you will find lots of information on how to put your travel together. There's travel authorization, you know, keeping how to complete the form, what's allowable. So anyways, go back to your grant forms library. Tuition waivers or you need to either have a class schedule, the course description, or an attestation. If you have a postdoc or graduate students that are helping with your research, and in turn you are paying for their tuition for classes, you will need to submit an attestation just saying these funds, I am, and then your name, these funds are being used for educational classes toward the degree of this research assistant. Okay, subcontracts have to be pre-approved, and that comes that will be part of the department's file. And annually, we need a certificate of liability insurance. Okay. All right, we talked about the legislative report, and then of course the final required deliverables. All right, change request, we talked a little bit about this. If you need to change your budget categories, that's a change request. Change in key personnel, and protocol change. We don't want to see that definitely the first year. This is more the exception than the rule. And once again, in your attachment 1 and attachment 2, you will see when if you want to apply for a no cost extension, when that is due by. And once again, no cost extensions beyond the 54 months. Okay, that's all that I have, but we will open it up for questions. And so let's get to it.
Bonnie, this is Carol. Did put the link for the salary cap in the chat.
You put the salary cap in the chat?
Yes, the link.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. Okay. Other questions? I can't see the chat. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. You have, you will, if you haven't been notified by your grant manager, you will be within the next day or so. And we are here to help you. We are going to work with you to get this executed as soon as possible so that you can start your research.
2 questions. May I ask 2 questions here?
Yes.
So one, is this webinar recorded somewhere so that my grants administration people can access it if they need to?
Yes,
Okay.
it is being recorded, and it will be in the grant management forms library.
Okay. And second, is there by any chance a step-by-step, like a set of instructions somewhere saying 1, do this, 2, do this, 3, do this? I mean, in order to execute the grant.
Right, right. Okay. Cheryl, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, can you hear me well?
No.
You know, I'm having audio difficulties. I've been trying to type answers in the chat. Could you repeat?
I can hear you, but I can't understand you.
Can you repeat the question?
You're not, So he wants to know if there's a step-by-step, like a 1 through 20 of what needs to be completed on their end.
As far as the budget, no, because the budgets are very individual. While we have a format for you to put the budget in, we would have to go over that budget with you. Your grant manager will be in contact with you to go over anything particular that needs to be corrected.
Okay, so I was really more specifically or asking a broader question than that. I get the impression from emails that I received that there are steps that have to be taken to actually activate this grant that include but are not limited to the budget document. I've been instructed to go to PeerNet. When I go to PeerNet, all I see is a couple of documents, the award letter and the proposal itself. I'm a little vague on what are the actual steps that have to be taken to activate this grant, and I was wondering if there really was a simple thing somewhere that would guide me in that.
I see, and I understand your question now. The first step is the budget revision, and then the grant manager, when they receive that, they have a package we have to compile of all the documents, and that begins a routing process on our side. And at the point that it's complete, you will receive the document. The grantee SRO office will receive the execution documents by DocuSign, and then they will download that and route it internally to whomever they need to review it, and then it's signed by your official and then returned to us for our official to sign. At that point, your fully executed grant documents will be uploaded to PeerNet and you'll be notified.
Okay, so to summarize that, the first step is to get the grant, get the budget finalized. Then thereafter, everything will unfold in some manner or other. We'll be informed what we need to do.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
We use your grant application to populate the terms and conditions and the attachment 1 and the attachment 2. And then we also add your conflict of interest form. And then it's really on our end to compile the documents and to get them into the routing for execution. Now, the one thing that I'm not seeing in the online grant management system, the forms library, is sample terms and conditions. That probably would be helpful. So I'm going to make a note to make sure that gets out to all of you. So you can see what the terms and conditions look like. And it's standard for everybody. Okay. All right, I think there's 2 more questions. Okay, go ahead.
Did you say they are no longer requiring the grant continuation report?
That's true.
Are the grant forms in PeerNet?
Yes. Well, okay. So in PeerNet, the grant management forms library, there's a link to this library in PeerNet. And it links to this site here, which is at the floridahealth.gov. And so whenever we make changes to this website, it will automatically get updated in PeerNet.
My understanding is that PI has to be 50% FTE employed institution to be considered. Is that correct?
Well, the research the PI needs to be in a permanent position at the research institution, and if 50% is considered an established research position, then you're fine. If not, you probably should give me a phone call. I'm Bonnie Gon Bailey, and I'm over biomedical research. My phone number is 850, and you can put this in the chat too, 850-558-9620. your grant manager will be reaching out to you too.
Sorry, I must have missed this information, but how do we know if the budget needs to be revised or has it been accepted as is?
Most of the research grants are reduced a little bit. But like I had said before, 8 of 9 of the Bella had no changes at all, Live Like Bella. So when the Biomedical Research Advisory Council meets to make the funding recommendations, they look at if they make a reduction in all of the research grants, can they fund another research grant? And so that's why the changes or the reduction happens. So the easiest, so you in your award letter, you have your total amount that was awarded. The easiest changes to make is to take it out of supplies or other expenses, knowing that budget change requests can be made throughout the life of your grant. So those are the changes that occur. Now, let's say you also submitted your application, grant application for 4 years, and now you want to revise that to be 3 years. Then you're going to need to really take a close look at your budget and show for each of the 12 months or each fiscal year how much will be spent. Cheryl?
Yes, I just wanted to add on to that, that your grant manager will be in touch with you in the next day or so, preferably by the end of the day, Monday, to start a conversation with you about what exact changes need to be made on the application budget. And there will be a notated version of that will come to you with grant manager's note, specific changes from transferring it from the application budget format into the format that we need to insert into the grant document. It's a little bit of a transfer that has to happen and a formatting issue. And so beyond that, there may be some individual items that need to be addressed. And specifically, if you have a reduction, we have a worksheet that we're going to send you that will make a suggested change and hopefully expedite the process of deciding, where those funds can come from the easiest. And that doesn't mean it's set in stone. If you prefer for it to come from another category, you certainly can do that. But we're going to try to help that along a little bit by giving you some suggestions on how to fix your budget. So you're not just out there flailing around trying to figure it out. We're going to give you some help, tangible help up front with some notes, and then your grant manager is going to follow up and call you and have contact with you either through Teams or through a conference call and go over things with you. If you have any other questions and issues, please reach out to them until you get it resolved so that you can, I know your SRO has to sign your budget as well, so you have to factor that time in to the process to make sure that you allow adequate number of days next week. If they need a day or 2 or 3, then you have to work that in as well. So we're going to try to work with you very quickly to make these little minor changes and move the budget forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, there are no other questions. I'm going to just give it another minute or so and put them in the chat.
One thing too, Bonnie, is the financial contacts. That is something really important that the PI needs to relay that information onto their grant manager right away, because I know it's different from the pre-award versus post-award individuals that deal with the grant. So we need to know who is the post-award person that's going to be actually working on this budget and these revisions for you. because in most cases, we find that that is a different individual than who may have handled it in the beginning. So please discover who that person is, pin that down, and send an email to your grant manager. You should have received an email by now from your assigned grant manager, or you can contact Bonnie or myself. My name is Cheryl Mosley. I'm the grant coordinator, and I'll put my info in the chat as well.
Okay, final questions? All right. Thank you, everyone. Once again, congratulations on your award. We look forward to all the exciting research progress that you'll be making, and we are here to help you. And once again, we are trying to get these grants executed as fast as possible so that you can start your work. Okay. All right. Thanks again. Have a good day. Bye.